The payphone rang at 2:13 in the morning, and the number on the call log belonged to a house that had been torn down 6 years earlier. I want to be clear about that, because it's the part people always try to fix for me. They say the log glitched, or somebody spoofed the line, or I read it wrong at 2 in the morning in the cold, but I ran that phone. I knew its log the way you know your own handwriting, and the house that number belonged to was mine. I lived in it for 11 years. My wife made her last phone call from it, to me, the night she died, and I didn't pick up. So when it rang from that number, 6 years after they knocked the house flat and hauled it off in a dumpster, I knew two things at once. I knew it was impossible, and I knew exactly who was calling. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up to the job, because you need to understand how ordinary it was before it wasn't. My name is Ray Halloran. I was 46 that winter. I'm a lineman. I fix telephone lines for a little rural co-op that most people have never heard of, out where the cell towers give up and the map goes empty. There's a stretch of highway up there, 80-some miles between the last gas station and the next, that locals just call the Reach. No towns, no bars on your phone. In summer, it's the prettiest drive in the state. In winter, it's a place people die, quietly in ditches and whiteouts, waiting for a help that has no way of knowing they need it. Which is why the co-op keeps one payphone alive out there, at the Mile 71 pull-off. One steel booth, bolted to a concrete pad, hooked to a buried copper line that runs all the way back to civilization. It's the only working phone for 40 miles in either direction. People call it the last payphone in Alaska. It probably isn't, technically. But it's the last one that matters, the last one that's ever saved anybody's life. And keeping it running was my job. I drove out there twice a week to check the line, empty the coin box, wipe the ice off the receiver. Boring work. I liked boring work. Boring work was the whole reason I took the route nobody else wanted, the long empty one, alone. I should tell you about that, actually, because it's the center of everything, and if I skip it, none of the rest will land. 7 years before any of this, my wife left me. Her name was Marie. It wasn't a dramatic leaving. No screaming, no thrown dishes. Just the slow, quiet kind where two people wear each other down to nothing, and one of them finally says it out loud. She moved into a place in town. We were going to do it civil for our daughter's sake. Nora was 12 then, and one night in November, Marie called me. Late. I was still angry. The useless, self-righteous kind of angry a man gets when he's the one who caused the wreck but won't admit it. I saw her name on my phone and I let it ring. I remember looking at it ringing on the nightstand and thinking, whatever it is, it can wait till morning. I let it go to voicemail. I rolled over. She'd been driving the Reach that night, coming back from her sister's, and there was weather, and she went off at Mile 71 into the cut bank and the truck rolled and that was it. They figured the time of the crash from her watch, which stopped when she hit. 2013 a.m. The same 2:13 she'd called me. She'd called me from the road, from right where she died. And I let it ring. I never listened to the voicemail. I told myself the phone glitched and there wasn't one. There was one. I just could never make myself press play. And after a while the phone died and I got a new one and it was gone. And I have spent every day since then not knowing what my wife said to me in the last minute of her life. That's the wound. I carried it into that steel booth at Mile 71 twice a week for years, and never once thought the two things had anything to do with each other. The booth was just the booth, until the winter it started ringing. The first strange thing was the ringing itself, and for a while I had 100 reasons for it. A payphone gets incoming calls, sure. Wrong numbers. A kid messing around. Once in a blue moon, somebody trying to reach a traveler they know is on the road. But out at Mile 71, incoming calls were rare as sunshine in January. So the first time I was standing at the booth doing my line check, and the thing went off in my hand, I about jumped out of my boots. I answered. Static. That deep ocean-sounding static you don't hear anymore, the kind old copper makes. Under it, faint, something that might have been breathing and might have been wind in the line. Co-op, this is Ray, I said, which is dumb. You don't answer a payphone like that. But it's what came out. The static swelled and cut off. Dead. Line fault, I figured. Water in a splice somewhere, a bad induction. the copper picking up a ghost signal off a parallel run. That's a real thing. Old lines do it. I wrote it in the log. Intermittent ring, no caller, check splices, and I drove home and didn't think about it. Except it kept happening. Always late. Always when I happened to be out there past dark, which as a lineman in winter is most of the time because the sun's gone by 4, and it always did the same thing. Rang, static. That breath or wind sound, cut off. I traced the whole line twice. I replaced a section of cable I didn't love the look of. Made no difference. Then one night I was in the truck at the pull-off filling out paperwork. Engine running, heater going, and the booth rang. I could see it from where I sat, lit up green under the 1 sodium light, snow coming down soft around it. And I did the thing you're not supposed to do when a problem won't go away. I got curious. I walked over, picked up, static, breathing. And then, way down at the bottom of it, so quiet I pressed the receiver so hard into my ear it hurt. A voice. A woman, crying. Not words, just that hitching, trying to catch her breath crying of somebody who's been at it a while. And then the line clicked, and she was gone. I stood there with the receiver in my hand and the snow tapping the glass, and I told myself it was a crossed line. Somebody's real call. Some real woman having a real bad night 40 miles away. Bleeding across the copper into my booth. That's a real thing too. I held on to that. I needed it. Then I hung up the phone, and I checked the log the co-op keeps automatically on that line, the incoming record, and there was the call, time-stamped, and there was the number it came from. It was my old home number, the house that didn't exist anymore. I didn't sleep that night, and in the morning I did what you do. I found the reasonable explanation. Numbers get recycled. The phone company reassigns them after a few years. Somebody in some other town now had my old number, and by pure ugly coincidence they dialed a wrong number into the reach in the middle of the night. I actually called the number to prove it to myself. From my truck, the next afternoon, parked at the pull-off in daylight where nothing bad could happen. It rang twice and a recording came on. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. Not reassigned. Dead. Disconnected. The way it had been for 6 years. So a disconnected number had placed a call. I sat with that for a long time. That's about when the second strange thing started, and it was the coins. Part of the job is emptying the coin box. Nobody's using quarters in a payphone in the modern age. So mostly I'd open it up and there'd be nothing. Or a few coins from some tourist who wanted the novelty of it. 10, 20 bucks a season, if that. The week after the crying call, I opened the coin box and it was full. Packed. Heavy in my hand. And every single coin in it was a quarter, and every single quarter was minted the same year. I know because I'm the kind of tired, careful man who counts things to keep his head quiet, and I sat in the truck and went through the whole box, and they were all the same year without one exception. The year was the year Marie died. I emptied the box, I'll admit, with shaking hands. I dumped every coin into the snowbank at the edge of the pull-off because I did not want them in my truck. Drove home, came back 3 days later. Opened the box, full again, all quarters, all the same year. And out in the snowbank where I dumped the first batch, there was nothing. No coins, just clean snow like I'd never poured a thing there. I want you to notice that I still went back. Twice a week on schedule. I told my boss the line had a fault I was chasing. I told myself the same. But the truth is, I'd started to need it. Need to walk to that booth and stand in it and see if it would ring. Because somewhere in there I'd stopped believing it was a crossed line and started hoping it was Marie. Grief will do that to you. It'll make you walk toward the very thing that's hunting you and call it a rescue. The third strange thing was the footprints, and it's the one that finally scared me straight, at least for a while. There'd been fresh snow, 6 inches of it, still coming down when I pulled into the pull-off after dark. Untouched. Mine were the only tire tracks. I sat a minute letting the truck warm, watching the booth, and I saw them. Footprints, leading up to the booth. They came from out on the highway, from the middle of the road, from the empty white center line where no car had been, straight across the shoulder to the booth door. Small prints. A woman's by the size. And here's the part I've never been able to put down. They only went one way. They led to the booth. There were no prints leading away from it. And there was no one inside it. just the receiver hanging off its hook, swinging a little, like it had just been set down. I did not get out of the truck. I sat there with my hands locked on the wheel and I watched that receiver swing until it stopped. And then I put the truck in reverse and I drove the 80 miles home in the dark without stopping. And the whole way I kept checking the rear view like something might be keeping pace out there in the black past the headlights. The next morning I went to see Gus. Gus Petrovich was the man who'd run my route before my boss, before the co-op even fully computerized. 80s now, sharp as a tack. Lived alone in a cabin outside town with a wood stove and about 4,000 books. Everybody said if you had a question about the old lines, Gus was the last man alive who knew the answers. I told him about the ringing. He nodded, slow, like I'd told him it was snowing. I told him about the number, and his hands went still on his coffee cup. And when I told him about the coins and the year, he set the cup down and looked at me for a long moment. And he said, "It's still doing that then. Still." That word landed in me like a stone in a well. He told me the phone had been at mile 71 since before he started, and it had been ringing itself in the dead of night for as long as anyone had run that route. Every caretaker got the calls. Every one of us, he said. And I heard the US, and it was never a stranger on the line. It was always somebody the caretaker had lost, somebody they'd failed, or left behind, or never got to say the thing to. The phone didn't connect you to the living, Gus said. It connected you to the one call you never should have missed. I asked him why the co-op kept it if it did that. And he gave me a look I'll never forget, tired and gentle and terrible. And he said, "Because it also saves people. Real travelers, real lives, all the time. It's a good phone in the day and a bad one at night. The trick is you keep it running for the living, and you never ever answer it for the dead." He leaned forward. "There's a rule, Ray. The man before me wrote it in the cabinet log, and I wrote it again for whoever came after, and I'd bet money it's still in there. You let it ring. You don't answer after dark. And whatever you do, whatever you hear, you do not call it back. I ask what happens if you do." Gus looked at his hands. "There was a feller ran the route too before me," he said. "Dell. His boy drowned, and the phone gave him his boy back. On the line, a little clearer every night. Dell started answering. Then he started calling back. Then one night in February, he drove out to mile 71, and he walked off the pull-off out onto the reach in a whiteout in his shirt sleeves, and they found his truck running and his door open, and never found one piece of him. He looked up at me. The conversation wants to finish, Ray. That's the thing. Once you pick up, it wants to finish. And when it finishes, you have to go where the other person is. So you don't let it start." I drove out that afternoon and I opened the steel cabinet in the booth, and under 40 years of maintenance logs, on the first yellowed page, in faded pencil, in a hand that wasn't Gus's and wasn't anyone's I knew, it said, "Do not answer after dark. Do not call back. IT will sound like them. IT is not them." I read it 4 times. Then I meant to obey it. I truly did. I lasted about 2 weeks. Here's what I've learned about a rule like that. It's easy to keep when the phone's silent. It's the hardest thing in the world to keep at 2:13 in the morning when the booth is ringing. And you know that Marie is on the other end. And you have spent 7 years not knowing what she said to you the night she died. The first time I broke it, I told myself I was just going to listen, not talk, just hear her voice one time. I picked up and there was the static, and then her voice came through clearer than it ever had, clear as a phone call from the next room, and she said my name, Ray, just that. And I hung up so fast I bruised my hand on the hook, and I sat in the snow outside the booth and cried like I hadn't since the funeral. But I'd heard her, and once you've heard them, you can't unwant it. I went back. I answered. Every night I answered, and every night she was closer, warmer, more herself. She talked about small things at first. A song we liked, the way our kitchen used to smell in the fall. She never sounded like a ghost. She sounded like my wife, a little cold, a little tired, calling me late the way she used to. And God help me, it was the happiest I'd been in 7 years. I stopped dreading the drive. I started leaving early to get out there. My boss said I looked good, asked if I'd met somebody. I laughed and said no. Then the calls started turning. She started talking about that night. about the road, about how cold it was in the cut bank, and how long she'd waited, and how she'd called me and I hadn't come. She didn't say it angry. That was the worst part. She said it soft, forgiving, like it was all just a mix-up we could still fix. You couldn't have known, she'd say. But you can come now, Ray. I'm still out here. I'm at 71. It's so cold. Just come get me. Come finish it. Come bring me home. And every cell in my body wanted to. Do you understand? Every part of me that had been screaming sorry into the dark for 7 years wanted to put the phone down and walk out onto that road and go get her. And finally answer the call I'd let ring. That was the trap. It wasn't a monster with teeth. It was the one thing I wanted most in the world, held just out of reach. And all I had to do to have it was die. I got as far, one night, as opening the truck door. I had it open, one boot in the snow, the wind coming off the reach so cold it stopped my breath, and her voice still in my ear from the receiver I'd left hanging, saying, "Come on, Ray. Come on. I'm right here." And the only thing that stopped me was my phone buzzing in my coat pocket, a text from my daughter, Nora, 19 now, who I hadn't spoken to in over a year because I'd fallen apart after her mother died and pushed her away like I pushed everything away. The text said, "Dad, you okay? Had a bad dream about you." I sat back into the truck and I shut the door and I shook. I tried to end it the coward's way first. I told my boss the mile 71 line was failing beyond repair and recommended we decommission it. He fought me. It's a safety line, people die out there. But I pushed, and there was budget pressure, and finally a crew came out and cut the copper at the junction 40 miles back. Dead line. No power, no signal, nothing running to that booth at all. I watched them do it. I felt the relief come down over me like warm water. That night, at home, 80 miles away, my cell phone rang at 2:13 a.m. No service. I'd checked, I always check now. It said no service in the corner, but it rang. And the screen showed my old home number, the disconnected one, the house that wasn't there. I didn't answer. I sat up in bed and I watched it ring on the nightstand exactly the way I'd watched it ring the night she died. And I understood that cutting the line hadn't cut anything. The phone was never the thing. The phone was just where it lived. The thing was in me. The unanswered call, the unpressed voicemail, 7 years of a door I'd left open inside myself. It didn't need copper. It had me. It rang out. And in the morning there was a missed call in my log from that number, and the missed call showed a duration, 47 seconds. A missed call has no duration. A missed call is 0. This one said 47 seconds, which meant that somewhere on my silent phone in the dark while I sat there not touching it, the call had connected. Somebody had answered it, and it wasn't me. That's when I understood I couldn't outrun it or unplug it. I could only finish it. And I got to decide how. I drove out to mile 71 one last time, middle of the night on purpose, in the worst weather I could pick, because I'd figured out that the storm was part of it. The storm was the door. And I wanted the door wide open so there'd be no question afterward that I'd done this on purpose. With my eyes open. The booth was dead when I got there. No light. No line, 40 miles from any current. I stepped inside anyway, and I picked up the dead receiver and I held it to my ear. And of course it rang under my hand. A dead phone, ringing. And the static came up. And then Marie's voice, clearer than she'd ever been. Right there. Warm, close enough to touch. "You came," she said. "I knew you'd come. Come on now. Come get me. I'm right out on the road, Ray. Come finish it. And I want to tell you I was strong. I wasn't." I stood in that booth for a long time with the door of the truck at my back and the reach roaring white in front of me, and I nearly went. I had my whole weight leaned toward that road. What stopped me wasn't strength. It was that I finally said the thing. "Marie," I said, into the dead phone. "I'm sorry." I let it ring. That night, I saw you calling and I was angry and I let it ring. And you died in the cold calling for me and I didn't come. And I have hated myself every single day since. And I'm sorry. And I love you. And I would give anything to have picked up that phone. The voice went quiet. Waiting. Because it knew, the way it always knew, that the conversation was almost finished. And when it finished, I'd have to come. "But you're not on the road," I said. And my voice broke on it. You died on that road 7 years ago. What's on the road is the cold, and it's wearing your voice because it knows I'd follow your voice anywhere. And I can't follow you there. Marie, I've got a daughter who had a bad dream about her dad. I'm not done up here yet, so I'm going to say goodbye. A real one. The one I never got. And then I'm going to call back. And I said goodbye. And I hung up the dead receiver on its dead hook. The static didn't cut off this time. It faded. Slow and soft, like someone walking away across deep snow, getting smaller and smaller until there was just the wind. Out past the windshield, for 1 second, I thought I saw footprints appear in the fresh snow on the road. Small ones. A woman's, leading away this time. Away from the booth, out toward the middle of the reach, and then gone. I sat in the truck until the sky started to gray. Then I took out my phone. 1 bar, service crawling back as the storm broke, and I called Nora. Woke her up. Told her I was sorry for a lot of things and asked if I could come see her. She cried. I cried. It was the first call I'd answered right in 7 years. I put in for a transfer that spring. Different route, closer to town, cell towers the whole way. They found a young guy to take over the reach, and before he started I drove out, and I opened the steel cabinet, and I made sure the rule was still there on that first yellowed page, and under it, in my own hand, I wrote the date, and 1 more line. For whoever comes after him, it will sound exactly like the person you'd give anything to hear. That's how you'll know. I see Nora most weekends now. Gus passed last winter, peaceful, in his sleep. And I like to think he doesn't have any late calls to worry about wherever he is. The Mile 71 phone still stands out there on its concrete pad, still saves the odd traveler in the daytime, still rings itself at night for a young man I hope is smarter than I was. Most days I'm all right. I'd even say I'm happy. But here's the thing I can't shake. The reason I'm telling you all of this. A couple weeks ago, my phone rang at 2:13 in the morning. Full service, brand new phone, everything modern. And the screen showed my old home number, the disconnected one, the house that isn't there. I let it ring. I've learned to let it ring. I lay in the dark and I watched it and I did not touch it. And I felt almost proud of myself. And it rang out. And in the morning there was a missed call in my log from that number. The duration said 47 seconds. I never answered it. I want you to sit with that the way I have to. I never answered it. So who did?